Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome back to yet another Friday, the 7th of July, 2023 out here at Giga Texas. And I've got some really great information and some updates for you for today's video. In the intro, the first thing that I want to show you, as you can see by this series of images, production has resumed. It started yesterday at a smaller rate and it's starting to ramp back up. This follows the upgrades to the production line for the Model Ys. Now, I can't confirm this, but I've heard some rumors that part of the upgrade process is to split the Model Y production lines into a 4680 line and a 2170 line. But I can't confirm that, but it would make sense that they are doing these kinds of upgrades to help facilitate the production of the Model Ys. Of course, the Cybertruck production line assembly is really coming along quickly now, and employees have been moved over to that line to prepare for production to begin. So, great news. Now, another thing that I want to talk about briefly, as you can see by this series of images, we're up at the Megapacks site. They've installed a few more of the Megapacks. We're now up to 22 of them on site. More of the transformers are being installed. There's just a few of those remaining. And of course, the total number of the Megapacks will eventually be 68 of them. So they're about 1/3 of the way through installing the Megapacks. But progress continues, which is really great to see. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of both interesting but a little bit sad, is, as you can see by these images, that last old house has been demolished as we expected. Now, I do have a little bit of information about that old house. Actually, it wasn't a house at all. There was a complex of buildings put in here in the late 50s and into the 1960s. Originally, it was Austin Aggregates that had this site, and they were on contract to build and repair the runways at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, just a few miles away from here. And then later on, that company was bought and it became Austin Aggregates. And then many years later, it became Martin Marietta. And again, this building was actually their offices. So that's what this entire section was. And I think the reason why they wanted to keep it as long as possible is because of that historical nature. But as you can see today, it is now gone. So that is part of history. Now, there's a lot more to see in the video today, a lot more activity both on production side and construction side. So I hope that you take a look through the whole video and you appreciate the narration that we discuss. As always, thank you very much for your support. I do appreciate it, and I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Starting off at this clearing on the east side, because it looks like there's a lot of activity in this location, which is permitted as the multi-level garage location. And nearby, that clearing with the trailers that have been recently put in suggest that these may be the offices for the company doing the work to build that multi-level parking garage. And it should be right around in this general location. So it's great to see some of the activity that is underway here. As we continue to fly over this material staging location and parking lot, and also some of the trailers, we'll give a good view, especially with the lighting, of the activity on the east side of the south end of body in white and also the stamping machine structure. You can see there's quite a bit of materials that continue to be delivered here, moved inside both that loading platform and that large door on the right-hand side of the screen, and also through in these doors for the stamping machine structure as well. Now, quite a bit of this material is also supporting the production line upgrades. Most of those are completed, but there's still work going on. And in addition to that, other production lines are being added, and that is supporting the general assembly lines 2 and 3 that are also being completed on the west side. And this gives you a good view with that zoom in of some of the materials. that are being stockpiled here with the white wrapping and the white colored paint. That's going to go into stamping 2 on the south end of the building. On the middle of the screen, we can see that work is going on with this kind of intersection with this road. A lot of the formwork, many sections of rebar have been installed, some trenching, some piping, and it also looks like preparations are getting close to having concrete poured, at least in that framed out section. Now you'll notice there's a lot of water on the ground today. We did have a storm come through the area last night and it dumped quite a bit of rain, and it's not really going to impede the construction, but it did make for some of the muddy mess that you'll see in much of the site. But this is a good view of the south end, how it looks today. I will point to on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a new section of rebar and rebar cages being built for the foundation footings. And we'll get a closer look at that in a second. But also, as we fly up over the road, this gives you a good look at some of the machinery for that continuous flight auger system waiting for operations to resume. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the rebar cages that are being built for the footings. But directly ahead, we can see rebar has been moved over here, and also some more of the rebar cages are being constructed. There's 2 on the ground right at the bottom left, and then there's a few more over by the rebar. This also gives you a good view of that River Road extension and the removal of all of the materials on the left-hand side of the screen. As I turn the drone back towards the building, this is a good view again of that CFA auger crane system, and also this blue and white crane that was used to remove the wall panels of this large section of the south end. And that again is stamping 2, and that's where stamping machines and other metal processing machines are being assembled. And those white items I showed you at the west side or the east side of stamping, that's where this is going. We can also see many of these steel components. Looks like most of them are beams, maybe some columns that we saw delivered in my previous video being put on the ground. And then here we get a good view on the right-hand side of the screen into where there's that red bridge crane and also some of the white AIDA stamping presses. On the ground, we can see some rebar work kind of coming up through the roof, the floor, almost like they're walls. And then the perimeter grade beam, which is the end of the concrete, is being removed and prepared to extend the building. Looking inside, you can tell that there's been the deliveries of these crates with the white wrapping. A lot of activity on this west bay. There's a semi truck unloading inside as well. And then, unfortunately, with the sun, it makes it a little bit washed out, but you can see through where the plastic temporary wall is, where more work is being done on those AIDA stamping presses. Now I'll bring the drone up and away to give you a good look at the roof section that had the columns removed and the roof decking. And you can see how this looks today on this end of the building. And also looking down on the ground level where the footings have been installed and where we expect to see some of those steel parts on the left-hand side installed, probably later this week. But I'm also looking forward to seeing where we're going to start seeing the excavation work for more footings on this south end now that we see those rebar cages being made. Lots of contractor cars being parked on this side of the building, as you can tell, plus a lot of machinery. There's also materials, got some white pipes at the bottom of the screen. You can see where those white risers are sticking up out of the ground. There's an extensive amount of trench work that had all those pipes installed, both on the southwest and southeast sides. And then here where we see this well system, the crews have finished installing that drainage pipe. It goes through those 2 concrete manhole covers, and you can see those green pipes sticking up as well. Looks like they're filling in the dirt, so they may be completed with that. Here's a good view of the workers next to that well with the open top. Gives you an idea of the scale, and more excavators trying to remove that hill, probably using that dirt for the fill. There's another excavation here next to this concrete manhole cover. Looks like some blue pipes are being either installed or worked around, and also we can see that blue trench box as well near where the concrete goes down into the ground. Next to the temporary platform, we see more steel components. It looks like maybe some pipes on the left-hand side. We definitely see some steel beams next to that truck, which looks like may have, I don't know if they just unloaded there or if they're just doing some other work as well. And then along this side of General Assembly, still a lot of activity on the inside where they're assembling the production lines of General Assembly 2 and 3. And much of this equipment that we see being stored in this material staging, especially all of these white items, are part of the platforms that are set up for the equipment and the robots inside this section of the factory. So a lot of work is going on to finish that General Assembly line for Cybertruck in this part of the building, and also to expand into General Assembly 3, which will be for future production of a different product at some point in the future. So I think this is a good view of just the activity and the equipment that's being put into the building on this side. And let's go up and take a look at the main entrance and see how this side is transforming today. Now, this truck has just brought more of the stainless steel cladding that's being installed on these architectural beams and columns. This is a good view of the crews at work. You can see many of these now have some of the stainless steel cladding, even on a column on the right-hand side now. And it looks like they have the mounts, and they're kind of setting up the stainless steel into certain sections to make sure that they are centered properly. And then they continue to build that out towards the road. And the two closest to the door have most of the stainless steel on that top beam, as you can tell. More of the plywood is on the ground just to protect that concrete and that entrance from all of the work going on, especially with those man lifts to put the steel cladding onto those beams. We can tell here at the end of line, much of the materials have now been moved inside. There's just a little bit left remaining to be installed. Although it doesn't look really busy here at the moment, I have been seeing Model Ys coming out of this door, and you can actually see some inside being worked on. And now this is where the Model Ys exit the building for the first time, and then they're moved over to the east side. As we fly along the west side to the north, we're getting close to this ramp and this opening. You can tell that there's many of these crates, and it looks like those have been recently delivered, and we see a lot of that going into this part of the factory. And then here at the 4680 production cell section, got a lot of this blue equipment, also some of these steel drums with some materials, and it just looks like there's quite a bit of activity here inside. Again, this is where the 4680s are produced, and then a little bit further south is where the structural packs are built as well. So let's pop up over the wall onto the roof section, and I want to show you a few developments here. We'll start with the vents and the enclosures over the 4680 production site right now. You can also see some solar panels that have been removed and stacked waiting for reinstallation. And then as I pull away and gain a little altitude, and we cross over the main building, there's definitely some interesting activity going on the roof here. Now you can see some of these small rectangular steel frames. There's several on the left, right in the center, and then over where all the workers are currently doing some work on the roof. Some of it is to remove the weatherproof membrane, and they're also cutting in rectangular holes to the roof decking, and that will allow them to put some frames and some ventilation ducts. Also, you can see on the left-hand side the red and white. This is where some cutouts are going to be made. And then these metal frames are being installed with these 4 shorter legs into the roof. It's going to be mounting some sort of equipment. There's several of these frames, and also you can see some of the cutout roof decking material right in the bottom of the screen. As we proceed over here, we see some of these stanchions with electrical boxes, and then we also see this new white vent that's been installed, and the crew's removing some of the weatherproof membrane, the insulation, and getting ready to cut out that roof decking so they can install one of the frames, the base frames for these ventilation ducts. Now, I'm not sure, but this is right over where the 9,000 ton Gigapress is located, so they may need additional venting because of the heat associated with the aluminum furnaces that serve those Gigapresses. So let's fly up and we'll go over the power lines and we'll take a look at some other activity on the east side. Let's check in on the new car staging and transportation lot. You can tell that it's a lot more vehicles here today, a lot more trucks, a lot more activity. This is because of the production resumption after the line upgrades. Now, yesterday there was a small number of vehicles starting to show up here as the crews began to resume the production. And it looks like now that ramp is starting to increase. I would expect another week and then they'll be at and then probably starting to exceed the production rate that they had been on for the last month or so. And that should be made possible because of the line upgrades that were just made. This is the end-of-line tent structure that has been sort of cobbled together over the last month or so. This is where they do final checkouts before the vehicles are ready for shipping. And as you can tell, there are many Model Ys here getting ready to go through that particular checkpoint, and of course more of the transportation trucks. As we go over the testing calibration lot, we can see activity has resumed here as well. This tent is kind of the checkpoint as the Model Ys leave this section and then head over to the new car staging and transportation lot. We also see supercharging is back in force, and they're also doing some of the test drives on the test track here on the south end. I also wanted to give you just a different perspective of that clearing, those trailers, and this again on the upper left is where I think we're going to see construction for that multi-level parking garage. As I turn back towards the building, we can tell that many trucks are delivering items going through this checkpoint. This blue truck just turned around and is heading over towards the east side. Warehouse on wheels. We also see another kind of a bronze truck with some black items coming through this checkpoint as well. This just continues the big deliveries that we saw in my previous video. As we get closer to the building itself, we can tell that this concrete section that has been kind of removed with all the concrete, they're doing that trench work for some more plumbing, and you can see a couple more of the receiving doors are being constructed in this section. This continues that expansion of receiving doors and reconfiguration of concrete aprons on this side. Next to where these stairs are, we can see this excavation with the electrical conduit, the concrete vaults, and then that large excavation. Again, this is going to be where the conduit that runs along this berm takes a 90-degree turn and eventually will go into the main building. Lots of castings on the east side of the casting machine structure. We also see more progress in those three smaller receiving doors where there's been some ground slab removal and then a new foundation installed. All of that concrete work is done, and they're doing some steel assembly in that section. So I'll bring the drone down and give us a closer view of this section. Again, the widened berm on the left where the conduit and the concrete vaults have been installed are going to be finished up here soon. And then here we see several steel items on the ground for this ramp and some views inside those three receiving doors where we can tell that deeper foundation and has been completed and some of the steel has been installed. It looks like some of the concrete and that perimeter grade beam has been broken up, and they're going to have to work on that again. The windows on that corner still are removed. I'm not sure exactly why, but it'll be something that I'll check on in the next video. This main junction location now has the concrete top removed from one of the two vaults. It looks like there's some water inside from all of the recent rain, so they're probably doing that so they can drain it out and then they can resume work with the electrical conduit. As we fly around the north side of the building, paint shop is on the left-hand side. We're getting ready to pass over the section where the plastics manufacturing is being done. We can also see that The knockout crews for the white staining are putting tarps on both sides now of these platforms and also the window covering. And this is in preparation to begin that white staining work on this side of the building. In my previous video, we saw them doing the pressure washing to clean the concrete. So the white stain application is going to be happening probably later today. Now, as I fly over the cyber berm, I wanted to stop here and show you this work that's going on here. You can tell that there's some trenching and some other equipment. This is an AT&T crew. They're putting in fiber optic that will enter into the building on the northeast side, and the crews told me that they're going to be doing some bore drilling to complete the installation into the building. So that'll be something I'll be watching for over the next several days. While we're up here just north of the Tesla Road, let's check in on the Megapacks site and see what progress is happening today. Crossing over the workshops and the material staging, we can see that the site is really starting to transform and get much more completed. Most of the transformers have been installed with the exception of about, looks like 9 on this side of the building, and looks like the crews are preparing more of those concrete pads for those transformers. On the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that 22 of the Megapacks have now been installed. This is about 1/3 of the eventual 68 that will be installed at this site. And at this low altitude, this gives you a really good view of the transformers on the left, the Megapacks in the center, and how this is all being constructed and assembled on this site. And just imagine when we see all 68 here, how packed this section is going to appear. Now, as I continue to turn around and show you the rest of the site, we can see that there's a dump truck bringing more dirt. They're spreading it around the grade, and I think that's just to finalize the grade and also smooth out some of the sections that may not be completely level because of the construction that has been going on in this section. As I pull away further, the steel assembly continues. More of the insulators are being installed. The cable trays are pretty much completed, waiting for the wires to be installed. That concrete slab is in the curing process, and we see more of the conduit on the left-hand side of the screen. We also see 3 steel poles assembled next to those 2 white trucks, and I'll be curious to see where those are installed. Now, one of the things I would like to do, in addition to showing you the road work and the gravel that's being spread that connects the electrical switchyard with the Megapack, so I wanted to look up towards the north and just see how this ground level is still waiting for some construction so they can complete this entire section of the 2 sites. But anyway, on the left-hand side, we can see more excavation work now directly underneath the power lines, which is pretty interesting to watch. And of course, this is a good view of the, I don't know, 1/3 completed Megapack construction site. So I'm going to pull away and get up into higher altitude so you can see how this looks from this vantage point, and also the relationship between the Megapack site on the right and the electrical switchyard here in the center. And I'll bring the drone down next to these 3 large telephone poles or steel poles that have been installed with the high tension wires. The one remaining pole has been sectioned, but it still has not been carted off, and then you can see that kind of interesting steel structure on that 3rd one. And that'll be, I think, for some of the connections over to the Megapack site. As we fly back to the south, I'm showing you some of the work on the conduits in the middle of the screen, right next to the temporary electrical switchyard, and also some more of the steel corrugated pipe for the underground water management system waiting for installation. And then here, as I turn back towards the north and we bring the drone down, you can see these 2 vaults. This and cruise on the left-hand side of the screen. This is where the conduit extends to the south, and then to the north, you can see the red painted concrete around the pipes. That's for future maintenance personnel to make sure that they know that there's high-powered conduit underneath that area. But that all will eventually connect to the switchyard and over to the die shop and the battery cathode plant. Here, the underground vault next to that temporary retaining wall looks like continued concrete work, more rebar work, and now they're starting to put the top on the section that already has the concrete walls. And it looks like they're installing some of the forms and possibly getting ready to have concrete poured on that. So that kind of just confirms that this is going to be a completely enclosed underground structure. Now on the right hand side of the screen, as I pull away, take a look at the rebar. There's two kind of windows on the left and this other side. I think this is going to allow for some of those conduits that we just talked about to enter this particular section. So if that's true, we should probably see conduit in this entire section once it's completed. Still some concrete work to complete before this is done. So let's fly over to the die shop and battery cathode plant and take a look at the activity over there today. As we pass over the last parts of the Martin Marietta batch plant that remain on site, we can tell that there's a lot of activity going on the west side of the battery cathode plant and also on the east side. But we're going to start off here on the north end. I'm going to show you next to these receiving doors. As I zoom in, you'll see that the frames and forms are almost completed for the concrete walls that kind of divide up where those receiving doors are. We might see concrete poured there this weekend. Also, crews are working to finish up the window installation on that north end of the battery cathode plant. As I turn to look on the east side, near where the cell test lab is located, we can see that more of the underground steel corrugated pipe installation is being completed on this side of that cell test lab, and most of the trenches are being filled in. This recessed concrete section has a lot of water in it because of all the rain, so they're getting ready to pump that out right now. And then this section, this structure, I think this probably is a material handling structure. They're putting all the moisture berries in that yellow, and then they're putting a lot of concrete. Also in that center, we see kind of a trench, almost a raised trench with pipe work. All of this is going to be concreted in, and with the walls and the concrete structure, it kind of suggests that we'll see at some point materials being brought in here in bulk, possibly spodumene concentrate 6, or maybe some other ore, and that'll be used in the cathode plant to produce the materials for the battery cathodes. Now on the south end, that underground vault, it looks like still more work is being done with some plumbing around the concrete that has been poured. And also on the left-hand side of the screen, you can tell that one of the two nearby loading platforms has been removed, and there's just that blue section of wall panel remaining. So as I pull away, this is a good view on the entire east side, how this continues to transform, and the work that is being done to build that possibly material handling structure. Now the die shop has got a lot of work going on in the inside, not too much on the outside, and then in the alleyway we see quite a bit of work with trenching and also some of these concrete vaults. The vaults on the right are for electrical conduit, and this will eventually connect all the way over to the electrical switch yard. And then the concrete, trenches in the middle with that blue pipe goes along the entire length of this alleyway, and it goes up to where we see the trench work on the north end. Next to these nitrogen tanks, we can tell the manifold systems here, where eventually trucks will bring in the cryogenic material and be loaded into these tanks, and then the vaporizers next to them, those tall steel structures, will provide the gas necessary to be used inside the building. On the left-hand side, we see more trench work for underground piping, and then at the chiller plant, especially on this roof section, we see quite a bit of work going on, and then on the ground we see more form work, probably for some more concrete pads for equipment being prepared. But this is a good view of the work and the activity that is going on to install all the various manifolds, pipes, pumps, and tanks on the roof structure. As we look towards the north and start flying towards this direction, this trenching continues for that underground pipe running the entire middle section of this west side. Eventually there will be a lift station installed on the north end, probably near where that container is on the left-hand side of the screen. And we also see that materials are continuing to be stored just to the north of the battery cathode plant. And then this is a good view of the activity here next to the steel corrugated pipes, some of the junction pieces as well, and then here where the trench work is being filled in now. And that again has that piping system that runs through the alleyway all the way up to where that lift station will be. As we fly along this west side and approach the die shop over the workshops, just wanted to give you a good view of this concrete apron with those rail systems now, and that'll be supporting a gantry crane. As we fly over these trees, we can see yet another workshop, and then also the black HDPE pipe in that trench. A lot of water right now because of the rains, but that is continuing to have its installation. And of course, the big news today is the old house, which is really the offices for the original Capital Aggregates, and then ultimately the Martin Marietta has now been demolished. You can tell on the left-hand side of the screen it's completely gone. The debris pile is right next to that excavator and also that green refuge bin. And here all of the trees that were relocated from around the house are now in their new permanent locations a little farther to the west, kind of framing in this section. But as I get a little bit closer, this will be a good view of where the house used to be. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that kind of monument or structure. That's the last remaining piece of this once very busy office structure for the sand and gravel mines that were operated here from the 1950s all the way through into the 2010s. But I hope that you enjoy that view and also the information I provided at the intro about that structure. Over at the material staging, we can see that the TKS paint system, especially that large kind of dip tank, has been moved inside, and more of that equipment's getting ready to be moved in as well. So there's a good view, I think, of the activity going on here on Friday the 7th of July at Giga Texas. Big news is production has resumed following line upgrades. More work for the Cybertruck assembly lines and employees working in those assembly lines now. And of course, that old house being removed, plus the Megapack progress. I hope you enjoyed the views today and the discussion. As always, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.